Welcome to Storytime with Dan Booker. Welcome back. Appreciate you being here with me. Today we got a treat. We're going to read a new book, so new it's not even out yet. It's coming out on the 1st of next month, 1st of March 2024. So I'm really looking forward to reading this to you. I've already read quite a bit of it, and it is the most beautiful fantasy book I've read in a long time. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read the prologue, chapters 1 and 2. And then the next reading we'll do 3 and 4. So I'm looking forward to this. I want to show you a couple of things, though, about this book. I'm going to bring this up to you. And this is kind of an unusual book because you not only get a glossary of all the different places and the things that you'll read in here, but it also has a pronunciation guide. So I think that's cool. It has some incredible maps. So really a lot of work has gone into this, and I really appreciate that. And it's not just the words that are written in here. It's all the thought, all the things that have made this a phenomenal book. So this was written, let me get her name up, and I do apologize if I'm pronouncing this wrong. HUSSNA AZAMY, and I hope I got that right. If not, I will correct it next time I read. So we're going to go right into the prologue, and this is the kingdom of Silas. What horrors awaited the 500 men to be gifted that full moon, Cypher didn't wish to know. And with each passing moment, his prayers to Kroso grew more fervent. All he wanted was for his father to be spared for one more month. The weight of anticipation pressed down on him, making it hard to remain still. Slowly, Cypher made his way to the hearth where Grandma stood, her hands trembling as she stirred the pot of soup. He observed her anxious glances toward the door and caught fragments of her muttered words to Father. He moved closer to listen in. The neighbors are talking behind our backs, Grandma said, her voice filled with concern. After you rejected the Hickam's family's marriage proposal, people are questioning your manhood and honor. Oh, people will talk regardless, Mother. Medulla is gone, Eric. She's not coming back, and you are 27 for Oriel's sake. Men your age have 3 or 4 wives, and at least a dozen children. You have only contributed 1 living child to this kingdom. What kind of civilian does that make you? To choose the love of your dead wife over the future of your land? Father sighed, running his hand through his brown hair, which was a shade darker than Cypher's. Let's talk about this later. The weight of their conversation settled on Cypher's shoulders. What if the kingdom targeted single men or those with the least number of children for the reaping? With a sense of unease settling in his stomach, Cypher collected the spoons and a loaf of bread, carrying them to the wooden table at the corner of their hut. As he arranged the items, Father appeared behind him, tousling his hair. Cypher crinkled his nose, reaching up to fix his disheveled strands. You always... The sound of a knock echoed through the room, slicing through the air like a blade. In an instant, the playful expression on Father's face turned solemn, mirroring the fear that churned within Cypher's own heart. Grandma said a prayer and held onto the wall to stand, a hand resting on her knee. It is just the wind, she said in a trembling voice. Let it be just the wind. But then there was another knock, this time louder. Cypher's heart raced as he heard armored footsteps outside. Father opened the door, revealing 2 men wearing chainmail and white tunics, swords hanging on their belts. One of the guards stepped inside. He had curly brown hair and wore a kohl under his eyes, indicating that he was married. Mr. Arik Haywood, he asked. Yes, Father said. I am Arik. We're here to inform you that your name is drawn to tonight's reaping. The kingdom will be gifting you to the Chaitan Empire to fulfill the terms of the Silesian Treaty. Father didn't flinch. He was composed, as if he wasn't being taken to a ruler who had sworn to make every male suffer. The second man stepped into the torchlight. He had dark skin and tawny eyes and black pupils. Holy Kroso, he was a blessed! Normally, Cypher would talk to a person blessed with magic and ask lots of questions about their affinity. But not that night. The blessed lifted a hand and flames manifested on his palms. He looked at each of them and his eyes settled on Father. Cypher swallowed, afraid of what might happen if Father refused to go with the guard. If only he had magic. Father nodded. You have my full cooperation, sir. He was calm, as if he had known that this was coming. Please, allow me to say farewell to my family. Of course. Cypher could still not believe the past few minutes. He couldn't let his father go. Blinking back the hot pressure behind his eyes, he looked up at the married guard, who seemed the friendlier of the two. Take me instead, Cypher said, almost choking on his words. Grandma and his village needed Father more than they needed him. The guard dropped to his knees on the straw-strewn floor. You aren't 13 yet, he said in a gentle tone, then glanced at Grandma, who was sobbing. You need to remain here and take care of her, young man. He patted Cypher on the back and stood up to face Father. We'll wait for you outside. And then he followed his companion out the door. Father bent to kiss Cypher on the forehead, cupping his face. His hands were stiff. Take care of Grandma for me. We'll exchange letters, all right? He was lying. A man who had been gifted couldn't visit his family or contact them in any form. Cypher gripped Father's sleeve. Don't go, he said, his voice breaking. Please. He was 11, and according to Silesian law, he wouldn't be considered a man in 2 years. And men didn't cry. But he wanted to. He'd already lost his mother and twin brother in an accident a few years back. How could Kroso Uriel be so unfair? How could the Kroso take away both his parents before he had a chance to grow up and serve them? Father pulled Cypher into a tight hug. Everything will be all right, son. Everything will be all right. Burying his face in his father's chest, Cypher inhaled the familiar scent of fresh linen and musk. Was this to be their final embrace? When they broke away, Father placed his hand on Cypher's shoulders. I'd like you to commit these words into your heart, he said, holding Cypher's gaze. Your worth as a human isn't tied to your gender, wealth, skills, or how you're treated by life, rather what value you bring to the ones around you. A nod was all Cypher could muster, but the pressure crowding into his throat. Father patted Cypher's back before walking up to Grandma, who opened her arms. The bowl of chopped vegetables sat forgotten in her lap. Father hugged her tightly, and she showered his face with kisses, murmuring words of love and blessing. He kissed her hand and whispered something in her ear that made her chuckle. Then he released her and headed for the door. On his way out, Father ruffled Cypher's hair and offered a small smile before walking outside. Cypher stared at the wooden door, the hole in his heart opening wider. He'd wish he'd never felt annoyed when Father had teased him in the past. He wished he'd returned home sooner in the evenings to spend more time with Father. He wished he'd finished weaving the pair of gloves he'd been planning to gift Father on his birthday next week. His chest grew heavy with a falling, spinning down feeling. The kind guard walked inside again, sidestepped the dummy his family used for dressmaking to approach Grandma. Forgot to give you this, ma'am, he said, handing her a masalas. Grandma accepted the fist-sized tribute, cradling it in her palm. A lilac flame burned in the center of the black pyramid-shaped object. It would continue to burn for as long as Father lived. If the flame went out, they would know he was dead and bury the masalas in the gifted graveyard. No, It wouldn't come to that. I'll find a way to save him. Cypher should have told that to Father so he wouldn't worry. Wait, he screamed, running behind the guard. He caught a glimpse of Father climbing onto the horse-drawn carriage and watched with teary eyes as the carriage moved farther and farther away. A dozen huts surrounding Cypher's home, almost identical to his own, with straw-covered roofs, small windows, and worn wooden doors. He knew each of the neighbors by name. Most of them were kind and caring. It would have been nice if they had come out to comfort Grandma to him, but they couldn't. All families were ordered to remain inside their homes during the full moon. Otherwise, their men would be gifted too. It would be a long, lonely night. Cypher wanted to drop to the ground and cry, but the neighbors were watching. He swallowed down his tears. He'd sob at night when no one could see. The full moon shone bright in the mahogany sky. The surrounding indigo and mustard clouds appeared darker than usual. I hate you, Cypher whispered to the sky. He asked Kroso Nafear to burn the moon with his Norse sun, so there would be no more full moons and no more drawings. But the Kroso hadn't listened. Maybe his friends were right. The Kroso had abandoned them. A hand rested on Cypher's shoulder, and he looked up to find Grandma's warm eyes staring back at him. Let's go inside, she said. Cypher took Grandma's hand, allowing himself to be led to their hut. Grandma sat him down on his pallet and brought him a bowl of soup. I'm not hungry, he said. She set the bowl on the floor and took a seat next to him. I know, my child, she said, caressing his hair, but you need your strength. In a couple of years, you'll be ready to take a wife and extend your family. You can't protect them if you don't eat and get strong. I'll never get married. Father had said early marriages and large families were necessary. Otherwise, their population would suffer due to the loss of thousands of men to the treaty and male trafficking each year. However, Cypher couldn't care less about the population at the moment. You must not say that. It is every man's duty to... What? If my name is drawn after marrying that poor girl, what if I had a son and he was gifted? The best way to protect his family was not to have one. Grandma glanced at Father's coat hanging on the wall. She swallowed, averting her gaze. It took her a moment to find her voice. I know it's hard for you, but it's the way things are. Every house in Celius has lost a father, husband, brother, or son to the treaty. He knew that, but why had they been forced into this treaty? Why had the Kroso Nafear stopped protecting them? Cypher pulled the bowl closer. I'll eat, he said, lifting his spoon. Only if you answer my questions without gilding the truth. I want to know everything. Maybe by getting the answers, he'd find a way to help Father. Grandma swallowed but nodded. Why the hell does the Empress hate men so much? Cypher asked. And knowing that, why did our kingdom agree to this treaty? The empire is ruled by the all-female race of Shaitans, and they consider males a lesser gender. People say the Empress was wronged by several men in her youth, and now she's holding all men accountable for the sins of a few. Her voice trembled more than usual. It disturbed him that he couldn't do anything to take away her pain. A century ago, they took over all the Mahavian lands except Sealas. Our borders are protected by Kroso Nafear's shield, so Titans can't invade us. Therefore, they cut off our trade routes and banned us from traveling to the rest of the world. As our economy collapsed and hunger grew, the king had no choice but to sign a treaty with the empire. He agreed to give 500 men each month in exchange for allowing us to trade and be accepted as a sovereign land. Hearing of the sheet made Cypher hopeful that the Kroso still cared, but before asking about the deity, he needed to know something else. What did Chaitans do with the gifted men? He asked, dreading the response. Grandma smiled. Nothing good. When he opened his mouth to ask more, she stopped him with a hand. You are too young to learn of such details. She pointed to his untouched bow with a knowing look. Her words did nothing to suppress Cypher's building apprehension for her father. What would they do to him? Would they torture him, kill him? He needed to find a way to help him. Tell me why Kroso has abandoned us, he said, taking a spoonful of the soup. Spinach soup was one of his favorite dishes, but tasted like lukewarm water that night. Regardless, he would finish it, for he needed his drink to bring back father. He hasn't. He's been taken by the Shaitans. Rumors that have it that an immensely powerful ally helped them capture the Kroso when he was at his most vulnerable state. So Kroso Uriel was taken like father, which meant he couldn't help. But what about the other Kroso? Speaking of him was a taboo, but Cypher didn't care at that moment. Tell me about Kroso Nafear. Grandma grew still, then shook her head. We do not speak of the feared one. Cypher dropped his spoon into his bowl. It landed with a clank, splashing drops of green liquid on the floor. Grandma looked at the ceiling as if asking for patience. With a sigh, she said, where the Kroso sets foot, destruction follows. People call him the Spine Eater for a reason. Cypher's eyes widened in fascination. His people needed someone like Nafear to save them from this treaty. Perhaps the Kroso could snack on the Empress's spine. An idea struck. What if he asked the Kroso to bless him with magic? Did the Empire take Kroso Nafear too? No one knows of his whereabouts. He is a solitary creature. Cypher ate the rest of his food in silence. Did anyone pray to him? After all, he was also a Kroso, and as powerful as Uriel. When finished with his meal, he set aside the empty bowl and rested his head on Grandma's lap. She planted a kiss on his brow and spread a blanket over him. Good night, my handsome boy. Good night, Grandma. Cypher closed his eyes and placed his hand over his heart in prayer. Dear Kroso Nafear, I know you are not a good person, but I don't need a good person's help. I want to destroy the Chaitan Empire, and you can help me. Grandma said you are always alone. If you bless me with magic, I'll be your friend. I'll play with you. Please help me. Please. He stayed awake for some time, revisiting the memories of father and shedding silent tears. Grandma sniffled. A sigh escaped her mouth. Wiping his tears, Cypher sat up and wrapped his arms around her neck. Please don't cry. I'll take care of you. I'll massage your feet in the mornings as father did. She pulled him into a tight hug and sobbed. My child, she said, showering his face. My child. My boy. Cypher remained in her arms until sleep claimed him. He woke to a warm brush of wind against his cheek. The hut's door was ajar. It was odd because he recalled it being closed. Grandma's soft snores came from the other side of the room. Father's pallet was empty and Cypher's chest ached as he remembered the reason. Carefully untangling himself from the blanket, he rose and tiptoed outside for some fresh air. It was still dark and unusually quiet. He didn't even hear the frogs croaking or the crickets chirping. For an autumn night, the air was unnaturally warm, like standing by a hearth. Why was a gigantic cloaked man materialized before him? Cypher staggered, falling on his back with a thump. He tilted back his head to see the figure's face, but he couldn't. The figure's shoulders reached the sky, his head obscured behind the clouds. The fine hair on Cypher's arms rose. He got up and retreated a step, eyes still glued to the giant man. Kroso Nafear? It had to be him. The grumbles and growls that came out of Nafear sounded more like a thunderstorm than any sound a human would make. A shudder ran down Cypher's spine. The figure lifted his index finger like a lava and a lava-like fluid oozed out of it. A few drops hit the dirt, hissing as they drilled holes in the ground. Cypher's heart pounded in his chest. Maybe it wasn't a good idea to pray to Nafear. He'd been a fool to think that Kroso would help. What if he eats me? Cypher swallowed hard and retreated further, only a few more steps and he'd be back in his hut, back to safety. Another growl tore from Nafear and he flicked his fingers, rendering Cypher momentarily motionless. Cypher tried to move his feet, lift his hands, or scream. He couldn't. Oh no, this wasn't happening. He wasn't going to die. Grandma had already lost father. She couldn't lose him too. I'm sorry if I disturbed you. I didn't mean to. Nafear's burning finger drew closer to Cypher's face. Please, let me go. An invisible hand grabbed Cypher by the hair, tilting back his head. He could do nothing but watch, wide-eyed, as a drop of lava fell onto his left eye. The liquid fire melted straight through his skull and pierced his brain, making him scream internally. Everything burned, his vision consumed by flames. Cypher bolted upright from sleep, cold sweat trickling down his spine. He reached for his left eye. There was no pain, but did his eyelid always feel this rough? Closing his right eye, he tested the other one's vision. He could see just fine. It was a dream, and I'm never praying to Nafear again. Adik, Grandma woke up with a start. What happened? She said, glancing around. Why, Cypher, are you all right, boy? Cypher was still panting, too shaken from the dream to speak. Grandma fumbled with the matches on a nearby table and lit a candle. When she held the candle to Cypher's face, she gasped and almost dropped it. What happened to you? She said, tilting his head to inspect his face. She whispered a few prayers as she studied his eyes. This isn't possible. Cypher's heart pounded. He jumped off the pallet and rushed to the mirror hanging on the wall. Grandma followed, holding the candle. It wasn't a dream. Cypher breathed, staring at his reflection. An amber scar marred his left eye, tracing a diagonal path from his eyelid down to his upper left cheek. When he reached for it, it glowed like burning coal, and the pupil of his eyes were gone. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're going to stop at the prologue. We'll recap. We'll do this in four different readings. I do apologize for saying we do 3 today, but this is going to take a while to get through. But that is the first, the prologue, beg your pardon, and we will do now 4 readings, ending with chapter 4. And I hope I got your interest here, because it just keeps getting better. And I look forward to reading the rest of it. I hope you'll return. And after we're done with this one, we've got another one by called the Galactic Culinary Society, I believe. I'll have to check that. And that's going to be a lot of fun to read. So that one's a little different than anything we've read before. So we keep getting new stuff, and I'm loving this. I'm having a ball. I hope you are too. I look forward to seeing you on our next reading. So thank you again for being here. And I look forward to seeing you on our next one, which will probably be in a few days. So thank you again. Have a good day. Bye. That's a lot better. Oh, fuck. Ugh. Whew. Let's see how many minutes that one was.